my name is McNamara, I'm the leader of the band. Although we're few in numbers, we're the finest in the land. We play at wakes and weddings and at every fancy ball. And when we played a few...
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another program of An Evening with Senator Michael Moore. I'm Joe Coggins. I'll be your host tonight, and we got all kinds of things to talk about. But first, I want to say good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Joe. Nice
Pleasure
to see you again.
See you. Pleasure. And we got a lot of things to talk about tonight. We got to get caught up because we kind of got off the track the last couple of shows, and subsequently some of the issues that we should have talked about never got to them. So tonight, it's catch up.
We're going to get to it, but we got to make it. Don't forget, we got time constraints. We got to get to that conservation hearing tonight.
Yes, I do, and you do too.
Yes. Yep.
So, having said that, you know, the last time we were together, we did talk about the legislative process and how to file a bill. Are there any new developments regarding the legislative session that you might want to share with us?
Well, just that we began the session the first Wednesday in January, when everyone was re-sworn in, or sworn in for the first time for the newly elected reps and senators. Right after the swearing-in process, the following week we had the beginning of the bill signing, the bill sponsoring session. And unlike when I first got elected, this session and the last one, right after the elections in November, we actually started putting together quite a bit of the legislation that we were going to be sponsoring this year. So we reviewed everything that had passed, that hadn't passed, or maybe had passed our branch and didn't pass the House. So we did all our refilings. We actually filed a little over 60 pieces of legislation. Some are new, some are refiles that we're going to try to get through again. And the way the process works is we did the filing, and then there was a period after the filing closes that you have an opportunity to co-sponsor legislation. So this is where myself and other elected officials will put out our bills over the email system, or we have constituents that will email the office a call and ask us to sign on to a piece of legislation. And again, there's roughly between 4,000 and 5,000 bills that are filed, so it's a very busy time where you're reviewing all the different pieces of legislation. And what complicates it too is that you may have the same piece of legislation sent to you by 3 different people. So you think you're looking at a piece of legislation once, but you're reviewing it multiple times. So we had that going on, and right now, then we got our committee assignments right after the bill signing. I mean, the co-sponsoring. We had to make the rules. Every session, you have to vote on the rules on which the Senate and the House are going to conduct their business. The House has their own rules, and then the Senate has our rules, and then we have what we call the joint rules, where now I'm chairman of the committee, the Joint Committee on Higher Education. So the joint rules would govern how joint committees operate, the recording of votes, hearings, how in the process of how you're going to conduct the hearings. So we've done that, and then after the rules were passed, the committee assignments were given out, and I was again reappointed to the chairman of the Committee on Higher Education. I'm vice chairman of Public Safety and Homeland Security. I'm reappointed to Ways and Means, Post Audit and Oversight, and I was actually given 3 additional committees: Workforce and Labor Development, Transportation, and then the Committee on Bonding and Bonding, Assets, and State Expenditures. So I've now gone from 4 committees to 7, and the Ways and Means Committee is actually, there's actually 2 committees. That's a joint committee that you meet together. Then you have a separate Senate committee. So 7 or 8 committees. So now I've got 7 or 8 committees that I'll be part of or having some role in over the next 2 years.
How do you squeeze your schedule between being, you know, in your office and being in a legislative session, plus being on all these committees? I mean, I would think it'd be at best mind-boggling.
Well, that's the first concern that came up this year whenever the committee assignments came down, is attending all the committees, because the way the committee assignments go, or the hearings are, I consult for the Higher Education Committee. I'll talk to my co-chair in the House of Representatives, Thompson Nicandro, and we schedule the hearings based on our schedule. So now, if you look at the other 6 committees now I'm part of, we're going to be attending hearings based on the scheduling of the convenience of those chairmen. So that's a concern. Actually being, I actually could be at a public safety hearing and there's a transportation hearing going on, or a post-audit hearing and a Ways and Means hearing going on. So I'm going to have to try to balance out to find, when you have your committee hearings, you put out to all the committee members, you put out on the website the list of bills that are going to be discussed. So I may have to be just trying to see which bills are being discussed at each hearing, and then pick which hearing I attend based on the importance of the bills that are going before the committees.
So this must take you later into the evening sometimes on some of these.
Well, again, last year I had 4 committees, and that's standard, usually like 3 or 4 committees. To get 7 committees now, it's going to be a juggle.
You get the Senate President mad at you or something?
Well, it's actually funny. When we got the assignments, I was like, "Is she being good to me?"
Yeah, right.
If you actually look at the assignments, they're actually good committees.
Yeah, they are excellent
With
committees.
with chairing the Committee on Higher Education, this past session we did the whole reform of our community college system, tying our workforce development efforts into our higher education efforts. So now that goes right along with the Committee on Labor and Workforce Development, continuing that initiative. We actually last year created the Office of Collaboration Coordination, which has the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, Economic Development, and Higher Education. They all sit in this one office, and they try to coordinate the activities of the 3 different sectors. So that ties well into that. And if you look at, I know it's part of the governor's budget, but there's going to be separate efforts also on transportation, the investment in transportation infrastructure. They're talking about maybe a transportation bond bill coming forth. Well, to be on the transportation committee is actually going to be, should be beneficial this session too. Now, if we're going to be putting a lot of emphasis on our transportation infrastructure, it's, again, it's going to be a positive to be on that committee. And that ties into that is, if we do these investments, they're all funded by bonds. So that's the committee on bonding, expenditure. So all 3 tie into, they're actually good committees. And then if we do any gun legislation coming up, maintaining my vice chairmanship on public safety is a positive. I do have a lot of interest in those issues, in that issue. So it's going to be a busy year. That's actually one of my concerns. And we actually have now in the State House, the hearing rooms, they actually invested in putting in the internet cameras, so now you can watch the hearings. So my concern is, some people could say, gee, how come he isn't at this hearing?
Right.
When I could be at another hearing. And then there's the issue of the implications back here. If there's meetings that I may end up having to miss here over the last 4 years here this year that I would have attended, or that I did attend over the last 4 years. So it's going to be, it's going to be a curve trying to figure out how I do this. And now it also means more work on my staff, because we're going to have constituents now calling us on all the bills that got filed before Transportation Committee. So they're going to be calling my office, not just the other 4 committees I have, but they're going to, now these new committees, they're going to be calling. We'd have to be answering questions on those. So
Why would the Senate President, knowing, I'm sure she's well aware of what a burden, not a burden, but how it taxes one's schedule, why would she do that?
Broaden my exposure to more committees. Give me, with my first term, I was chairman of the Committee on Small Business and Community Development, vice chair of Public Safety. I was on post-audit and natural resources. This past term, I was chairman of Higher Education, Public Safety again, post-audit again, but I was on Ways and Means. And I asked for those same 4 committees again. So the only way to get to, I guess, broaden my exposure to more other issues other than
Is Adam.
Mm-hmm. So,
all right, well, that explains that. I don't envy you one bit.
No, so it's going to be interesting.
As we said in the beginning, you and I both have to go to a meeting tonight here in town.
Yeah.
normally I guess it just worked out, but normally you would probably have to miss that.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll see how that works for you. Recently, the Senate voted on a supplemental budget to close any financial gaps that may currently exist, and I'm sure there are some in the 2013 budget. Can you talk to us a little bit and tell us how this plays out?
Well, we did a supplemental budget along with the governor's request for the 9C authority. That's the authority to give the governor to make cuts to the existing budget, and he has the authority to make the 9C cuts to the executive office agencies. So any agency that falls within the executive office, one of his secretariats, he can make that. He has authority to make those cuts. Where he doesn't have the authority to is make the cuts to local aid. He's got to come to the legislature and get that additional authority. So along with the supplemental budget, he was actually seeking the authority for the additional authority to make cuts to local aid.
And you guys said?
We said no.
You're so diplomatic the way you say no different than anyone else I ever heard anybody say no.
A nicer
Some
way?
people say no, and it's no. You say no like an apologetic no.
Well, if you look at, we have to have a balanced budget.
Of course we do.
And if we're going to make cuts, everyone should understand. We should share in the pain of the cuts being made. But when you're in mid-year, you're not going to go back to our schools, municipal governments, and say you've got to cut now from a budget that you've already planned.
We did that once, if I recall.
I think my first year in office.
Right.
Literally 5 minutes after getting sworn in, we had to make $1 billion. We gave him the authority to make $1 billion in cuts.
You know, I think that's when you said, "What did I get myself into?"
Yes. Right after I looked around, I was and feeling good and happy, and then I was like, okay.
So much for feeling good, right?
Yeah. So basically, what we had the first several months, we did not meet the benchmarks that were expected. Now, if you do a year-to-year comparison of, say September of this past September of 2013, 12 to September of 2011, even though the benchmarks fell below the monthly benchmarks, they were still above the previous year. So the revenues coming in are higher than last fiscal year, but they're just not as high as the benchmarks were set. And we actually did a conservative budget. We were far below the estimates, the revenue estimates that were originally given to us. So, it was a little disturbing not being able not to meet that. The projected budget shortfall for 2013 right now was $515 million. The month of January actually reduced that a little bit because we came in $250 million above, but that's only for the month of January. There was a lot of one-time revenues that came in, so we really can't project that out. We have to see now what February does to see if February either holds level, or maybe hopefully come a little higher. So we had to make the cuts. The governor also, besides the 9C authority, also withdrew $200 million from the stabilization fund, which is our rainy day fund. Now, if you go back to, again, when I first took office, the rainy day fund was at over $2 billion, and that was from when the economy was doing well.
When was that?
Well,
The economy doing well, I mean.
the year I got elected, the year I won the election, 2008,
Yep.
that July, the revenues came in $1 billion over projections. So there was $1 billion additional revenues that came in that year. It wasn't until actually September, right around the primary time, that the economy really started to collapse. So we gave them the authority to withdraw $200 million from the state's rainy day fund. We were at $1.6 billion. We were within the top 3 states in the country as far as our rainy day fund, which is important because if you look at when we go to borrow money, the bonding money that we use, all borrowed. So it's the higher our bonding rating is, the less the interest is that we have to pay on it. So the fact that we've, over the last 4 years, during these tough times, the state has actually received a lot of accolades for the fiscal management that we have had over the last 4 years. So with the bond rating going up, we're going to have a rainy day fund still about $1.2, $1.3 billion. So we're still going to be in the top tier of the country as far as the stabilization money that we're going to have put aside.
When you stop and think of it, that's really not a lot of money, though,
No, it's not.
for the
No.
state. I mean, people say, "Wow, $1.3 billion." I don't understand why we got to do this, that, and the other thing. But I can. I mean, it's as clear as the nose on your face. Why?
Well, you think about it. If instead of making cuts, we could have eaten up almost half of that money. Just if we just went to the rainy day fund and tried to utilize that instead of making the cuts on the state side.
Right.
So, and we didn't. When we first got the governor's recommendation that he was making, I advocated to the chairman of Ways and Means not to make the 9C cuts on the local level. I know a lot of other legislators did. So, I mean, people should really rest assured that when we're down there, I don't know of anyone who doesn't have local aid as one of their top budget priorities.
Oh, of course. I can see why.
Yeah.
Well, what would be ideal in a rainy day fund? About $3 billion? Be comfortable?
Well, the highest it was at, I think, was 2.3 or 2.4.
Mm-hmm.
But after this, to really weather an economic recession like we did,
Mm-hmm.
you probably actually need over $3 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Because even with the rainy day fund at the 2.3, 2.4 billion, we received the federal money, the stimulus money, and that saved us. That saved a lot of our jobs on the local level. Our school teachers, our police officers. That's really because we were able to supplement the funding with that. I mean, so again, that 2.4 would not have been enough if we didn't have that stimulus money that came in.
So my $3 billion figure would be
That would be
just about.
if you had a recession like we had, that would probably be on the low end. But again, people got to look at that. That recession we had was the closest thing to a depression. That was the worst recession we've had in. They were referring to it as the Great Recession. So I mean, people don't realize it because I think we weathered the storm well, and there was a lot of investments that were put into it, federal and state. So yeah, but we've got to make sure that we can't just keep spending the money. That we have to have some in the rainy day fund.
You stated that the budget process for the upcoming fiscal year has begun at the State House. I kind of like to have you explain to the nice folks out there what that budget process is and what it means.
Well, everyone saw by the last week of January, the governor has to have his budget released, and they call that House 1. That's the first year of his session. He releases his budget recommendation, which is House 1. Now, next year, it would be House 2. But, so the governor releases his budget to the House of Representatives. Now, the House of Representatives will review his budget proposal, and they could use it as input in putting their budget together, or they could disregard some of the suggestions in it. And then after they compile their budget, well, actually, I should say is that we actually started, before they do that, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means actually starts having hearings. And we actually had the first budget hearing last Thursday. We had it at the Garden Auditorium in the State House, where the Secretary of Administration and Finance, that's their financial people, they came in, presented the governor's budget. We had the treasurer came in, the auditor, so all the different secretariats, executive offices, elected officials are coming in, presenting their budgets. So we started the process with that, and we're going to hold different hearings. Now, today there was one hearing today that I couldn't make. It was a Ways and Means hearing today dealing on the public safety issues that was actually held at Worcester State University. There's one coming up out in Greenfield that we're going to be having on education. So each hearing is going to specialize in different areas. topic areas of budgeting, but they're held throughout the state, so people from all over the state have the opportunity to actually come to the hearings and express their opinions on their opinion of how they think funding levels or programs that should be supported. And then after that, you'll have the House will release their budget, and it may coincide with the governor's, it may not. Now, one thing people should remember is I know there's a lot of wonderful funding opportunities in the governor's budget, but they're all tied to a lot of tax initiatives, tax increases. Now, the way the Constitution works, the House is the body that has to initiate any tax increases. So if you see the House of Representatives in their budget include one tax increase, then when the budget comes to the Senate, it's what we call a money bill or a revenue bill. That means the Senate then can discuss tax increases. But if the House sends over a budget that doesn't have a tax increase, the Senate is restricted by the Constitution. We cannot discuss any tax increases. So it's got to initiate in the House first. So the House will send their budget over to us after they debate it, and they discuss, debate all their amendments and changes they want to make. And then it comes to us, and then we do the same process. We'll compile ours. I'm actually having my personal meeting with the chairman of Ways and Means next week, end of next week, on some of my budget suggestions for next year.
Steve Brewer.
Steve Brewer. Mm-hmm. So we meet with him, and then from there, after we'll release the budget, we put it out for debate. Then after we debate it, all the amendments that are being filed, then the budget goes to what's called a conference committee. And there's 3 members are appointed. There's the chairman of Ways and Means, usually the vice chair, and then there's the representative from the minority party. It's usually a minority leader or the assistant minority leader from each branch. So then the conference committee doesn't try. They have to work out an agreement, and it's a report from the conference committee that will be the budget that both branches then vote on. Now, when we vote on that final budget after the conference committee, unlike the first budget that we voting on, where we can file amendments, there's no amendments to the conference committee report. When that budget comes out of the conference committee, it's an up and down vote in the House, and it's an up and down vote in the Senate. So that's why you will have certain people, legislators, that when it comes to that budget, there may be 3 things in there they dislike and they'd like to change, but there's 10 things in there that they like. You'll have people that they'll vote for the budget or they'll vote against it based on what's in there. But you cannot make there's no amendments allowed to the process at that point. And then the governor, after the conference committee comes out, the budget goes to the governor. He has his 10 days to review it and sign it and make his vetoes. And now what we have in Massachusetts that everyone talks about Washington, that what they should have, which they don't have, is the governor has the line item veto authority. So he can actually go through there and just veto certain sections, lines in it, or funding, where the president does not have that authority. So the governor then sends that back to us. And then after that, we have, we can do overrides of the governor's budget. It doesn't have to be done within so many certain days of him doing it. But similar to tax increases, the overrides have to start in the House of Representatives. And so even if the Senate, if we want to override an issue that the governor may have line item vetoed, unless it's overridden in the House first, and to override it, it's got to be by a 2/3 vote. So unless the override originates in the House and passes by the 2/3 margin, the Senate we can't bring the issue up for a vote. So that's some of the differences in the branches. They have certain authority that we can't address. So there's the nice checks and balances in there.
Well, it makes sense to me, and I'm sure it makes sense to the folks out there listening. Hey, something that everybody's interested in, and I'm interested to hear what the answer is, Mike. With the prospect of another storm coming this weekend that we're taping the show,
Ooh.
and with I didn't know we named winter storms, but apparently we named this blizzard we had Nemo.
Yes.
We obviously the Commonwealth was greatly affected, but I do have to concede that I think they did a heck of a job cleaning up the snow in a quick way. I've always said this about the governor. That, I think he's very good in crisis management. I really do. I think he does an excellent job. He did an excellent job with hurricanes. He does an excellent job with major storms or any kind of disasters. So anyways, because of all the snow that we got, can you share with us what the state will do for the individual towns who obviously at this point don't have any money left to remove snow?
Well, we're going to have to, I don't even know if we've finished compiling yet the cost estimates from the previous storm, if those have come in yet.
No, probably not.
It's only been, what, a week,
Right.
week and a half? So,
Couple of weeks.
yeah, a couple weeks. So,
But even still.
yeah, right now we'll have to obviously see the extent of the damage done. I mean, one of the things that he did that hadn't been done since the blizzard of '78
Yeah.
was closing down the roads, banning travel on the roads, which actually worked out.
That was a great idea. I know I've heard some people, not a lot, but some criticism. How can you criticize something like that? I mean, there is what I believe is when government should be intrusive, if you want to use it. Maybe that's not a good word, but that's when government should exercise their authority.
Yeah.
And he did, and he didn't hesitate, you know. And I think it was an excellent.
And so do I. I mean, we get some emails from people complaining about whether he had the constitutional authority to do or not. But I look at this: I'd much rather have a road clear,
Right.
my road clear, than have maybe someone driving on the road who shouldn't be. They get stuck at the end of my road, stuck in the snow, and God forbid you need an emergency vehicle to come in there, and they can't get in because someone's a car is blocking a road.
Anybody who was around, like me, in the blizzard of '78 and all those thousands of cars that were
The Mass
stranded on 128, the Mass Pike 495, could absolutely be 150% behind the governor. We didn't have any of that this time.
No, because the roads are banned.
Right.
You're on the road.
I was on the road and up and out I kind of pushed the lifting of the ban. I was up and about at 11 o'clock, but I really needed my Dunkin' Donut fix, and I couldn't wait till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But when I went out there at 11 o'clock in the morning, other than the fact that the snow was piled a mile high on the side of the street, you never know that you had a major blizzard.
Right.
I mean, it even helped our local highway department, which, again, did an excellent job
Plowing, maintaining the roads.
making the roads safe and passable. And, yeah, some of the secondary streets, but, you know, the secondary streets are tough to plow.
Yeah.
Because if there's 2 or 3 cars parked, you know, where do you go with this?
Yeah.
You know? But all in all, I think, but I would say it's fair to say that we will be looking for some, because he declared a state of emergency.
Yep.
Most communities could look to having some emergency funds to help offset.
Hopefully, I mean, I think it's going to depend on obviously the gravity of the damage that was done. Other than some areas down the Cape, which really seemed like they took the brunt of
Right.
a lot of it. I know look, the whole state got hit, but it seemed like they really took the brunt of it. But for this storm coming up, the previous numbers that they had in place for an emergency, if the projections continue to follow, if the storm follows through with the projections they're talking about from anywhere, to 8 inches to 15 inches, there's a website that's www.mass.gov/MEMA that people can go to in case there's any emergencies or in case they declare a state of emergency again. So you can go to that. They also have a non-emergency telephone line, and that's the telephone information service is you dial 211. So you can also access MEMA that way. But again, the website website is www.mass.gov/MEMA, MEMA. or you can call their telephone service at 211. But also just remember, too, is that I think the last storm, there were approximately 20, maybe a little over 20 people that had heart attacks during the storm. And I know when I was out there shoveling, that I got halfway through it, and I was huffing, and I was thinking of that. I was like, this is where they always say people forget how...
You're not supposed to be shuffling, Mike, at your age. And I definitely don't shovel at my age. Although that's not so. I went out and I shoveled my car out, but I had help from the neighbors. The neighbors.
No, but they made me realize. I got halfway through it, and I was tired. And people don't realize the exertion, the effort that takes.
It's the worst thing you can do, they told me.
Yeah.
You know, if you have any kind of a heart problem, the worst thing you can do is shovel snow.
And when you had the Worcester firefighter from Sutton that died.
Yeah.
So he had a heart attack. So I mean, people just got to remember to be careful.
And this storm especially is going to be wet and heavy.
So that's even more so. Yeah.
So please, folks, if you're over 40, have somebody else do the shoveling.
Yeah.
You know, I've just entered into the world of electronics and computers and stuff. I'm dabbling a little bit with that now, and I was so proud of myself until I just heard you shouting out all this stuff, and I didn't understand the words. So I'm right back to where I was. I don't have a clue, okay? But I guess it means something to those that do the computer all the time. Your staff is going to be very proud of us, Mike, because we got our housekeeping cleaned up, because I only got one more question.
Oh, good. Okay.
And that'll take us right to the end. You were appointed a co-chair of the Council of State Governments Intergovernmental Affairs.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I'd like you to tell the folks out there just exactly what it is and what you do with that.
Well, the Council of State Government, it's a national organization. It was founded in 1933. It's the nation's only organization that serves all three branches of state government. The CSG is a region-based forum which fosters exchange of insight and ideas to help state officials shape public policies. I also got involved in the Education Committee. This is actually, I'm on that Eastern Trade Council, and trying to deal with the states on trade policies and trying to develop more trade opportunities for the state of Massachusetts and the region. So this committee that I've been appointed as a co-chair to this national committee there, and it's the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. It's a bipartisan committee, the primary policy body for the CSG, and the primary body setting the federal-state relations agenda for the Council of State Government. The mission of the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee is to serve as the CSG's monitoring, advisory arm on major federal issues before Congress. And also the committee strives to interpret changing national conditions and to prepare states for the future and to promote sovereignty of the states and their role in the American federal system. So it's part of our mission is to promote and maintain the current rights, state rights, and not to give up more rights to the federal government.
And that's what you'll be doing.
And that's what I'll be doing.
Ah. And that's one of the 7 committees.
No, this is
separate.
This is separate. This will actually involve. I think I actually, when they contacted me about this, they contacted me just this past week, and the first meeting was this weekend, so I wasn't able to attend. But in June, I think I have to go down to D.C. For the first committee meeting that we're going to have. Then we're going to have another one in September. Where the committee will actually get together, and I think probably at that point we will have some hearings or have meetings on trying to determine what we're looking at. I know one issue I want to bring up, and we discussed it. I think it was the last show, the whole preemption with the Surface Transportation Board.
Right.
So, and that's actually when I was asked to co-chair this. It's one of the first things I thought of, because we had it here in Millbury, we've got it in Grafton going on. We had the issue in Upton, and for those of you who don't know this preemption, I think we discussed it, the Surface Transportation Board. The preemption was passed 40 years ago, 50 years ago. No, actually even longer than that.
It was in the 30s.
30s, and it gave railroads the rights to come in through our communities, and they're exempt from certain bylaws and ordinances. Now, it's a big gray area because cities and towns, they have the right to inspect. They can go in and inspect, but they can't stop you. If you're not up to code, they can't stop you. You have the fire marshal's office, which maintains some rights, but to what degree they can enforce those is questionable. DEP maintains some rights if it's over an aquifer. So Grafton's fighting. I think you've seen it probably in the paper where Grafton's taken, the Board of Selectmen Grafton has taken the Upton Grafton Railroad to court, trying to determine whether this preemption fits. The Grafton operations falls within the preemption because the activities have to be railroad based, and that's where when you look at what's going on, is the activity actually part of the operation of the railroad? Where in the Grafton Upton Railroad, they're trying to put in a propane tank station in one section in the town of Grafton. And the question is, does that fall within the realm of the operation of the railroad?
That could be a major precedent because, as I think I said on the last show, Mike, and you agreed, when we took LB Railco to task when they wanted to put a hazardous waste dump on next to the mall, we were fighting tooth and nail that LB Railco wasn't a railroad because basically they didn't own locomotives, they didn't own
the tracks.
They didn't own the tracks. They didn't own anything about a caboose. And I think that's something I tagged on there. The only thing they owed was a caboose.
Well, see, this situation, it's the Grafton Upton Railroad. They own the tracks.
Right.
They own the train.
Right.
They're actually the ones putting in. Well,
which is why I think they're going forward in court. We stopped LB Railco when
we filed. We filed for
when
to
we
fight
filed
the preemption.
an official complaint with the what is it?
Surface Transportation Board.
Surface Transportation Board, the STB.
They packed up.
They just all of a sudden I remember getting a phone call saying that they withdrew their request and were moving on, and we thought we were in for the long haul.
Because we were actually advised by town council that we were going to lose.
Yeah, well, that was wrong.
Well, you know, and again, long term, you don't know. If
No,
they had
you
fought
don't.
it, we don't know. But they may
But I
not.
think they saw I think their lawyers advised them that their credibility as a railroad would be challenged elsewhere if they lost this case in the little town of Millbury.
And you don't know what they had for financial resources. Where the Grafton Upton Railroad, they may have more financial backing where they can carry this case through the court system. Where the other company was such a small company, you don't know if they had the financial backing to do that.
Well, I think there was a lot of ifs there, but I don't think money was one of them. If you looked at the board of directors on LB Railco, there was some serious money there.
And I think if you look in Grafton, part of the question is it's the Grafton Upton Railroad, then there's the propane station, but there's all these different subsidiaries or sub corporations that are formed, but they all end up tying back to the railroad. So
it's too bad that they can't come together because the fact that a local person is trying to revive.
Some efforts have been made for them to talk.
Oh, okay, good, because it would be a shame.
People have been put together.
If the towns, both Grafton and Upton and the railroad can't come to, there's got to be a happy medium there. There's a happy medium with most everything.
Well, we have, we've actually also sent a letter to, I've sent correspondence to a new U.S. Senator Warren. I actually sent it to Kerry's office too, and Congressman McGovern's office, seeing if we can get some sort of federal action, legislation action, just clarifying. I'm saying you have to do, because the preemption actually makes sense, because you can't, if you're looking at interstate commerce, you can't have a certain track in Millbury have restrictions, or say like and this is overly simplifying, but say you have a speed limit of 15 miles an hour. And then so you come to Millbury, all from Millbury it's 15 miles an hour. Then you go to Grafton, it jumps up to 50 miles an hour. Then you go to the next town, it goes, I mean, so you've got to have some consistency.
I agree.
So you can understand that. But there's got to be some clarification to our communities that, yes, the railroad's coming through, they're coming through, you can't restrict them by ordinances, but you do maintain certain rights. The rights should be detailed so that communities don't have to spend the money going to court. They can look at the law and they can say, okay, this is what we can do. We can do inspections. They have to follow this. They have to follow that. The law should be just simplified or explained so that the communities have that basic concept.
Well, like I say, I hope that that works out, because that could get to be very expensive for both sides.
I think it's my understanding the judge is supposed to come out. They already had the final arguments. The judge is supposed to come out with a ruling soon. Now, the question is, if the judge, after the ruling, does anyone appeal?
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Is they
Yeah.
could just go on forever.
Right.
My guess, if verbiage breaks down, I think both sides are prepared to go as far as they need to go with this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all going to depend on the extent. I think it should depend on the extent of what the federal judge states in his ruling.
Right.
To the degree.
Well, yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, if he just gives a blanket, or if it's
most times they're vague.
right. So if it's ambiguous, then yeah, you're right. Then the town sees an avenue. Well, maybe they will go forward. But again, it's
$2.5 million later, and they're still fighting a cause. But you know what? I understand their plight, having been there. You too, having been there.
yeah.
You know, I don't blame them one bit.
Well, and again, I think what would have benefited the railroad, when we started getting the calls, there was such confusion on what they were actually doing. The company hadn't submitted an official plan to the town. So when I called the town, and they weren't sure, the selectmen hadn't been told, they weren't sure. So when we held the public forum, we put together a forum at the Grafton, at the municipal center there, the old high school, and I think we had 200 people, maybe 300 people show up. Well, the owner of the railroad actually called and asked if he could attend to explain what he was doing. That was the first real official explanation to the selectmen, to the town manager, to all these people on what he was doing. So, I mean, so again, transparency or some open discussions about it. And I can understand the owner of the railroad also saying that he broached the town a year ago, but he only had concepts then. He didn't really have anything.
Right.
So it wasn't until the latter stages that he claims that he finally finalized the plans and putting things forward that he was going to come to the town. But by that time, rumors were already circulating that it was going to be, there was a, God knows what was going in there, that they were digging tanks underneath the ground. There's an aquifer there. It's like a half-mile away from the new elementary school that they have. So there were a lot of concerns and confusion.
Oh, there's a lot of issues there. I absolutely can see the town's concerns.
Yeah.
But I'm also a little bit sympathetic to that particular railroad, though. So,
Yeah.
good luck to them. Mike, we got a minute left. Why don't you tell folks, as usual, how they get a hold of you?
Office number 617-722-1485, and the email is michael.moore@masenate.gov. And happy St. Patrick's Day.
And to get a hold of me, obviously my number's going across my chest right as we speak. And happy St. Patrick's Day also. And until the next show, you have a pleasant month. And stay out of the hot sun.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. From glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all of the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be here sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, oh, Danny boy, we love you so.